These are the last few hours of my 38th year here on this planet. And I was about to go to sleep, but having watched the video I made last night again, it ignited in me another whole wave of realizations about my purpose. Not like a professional purpose, but again, the evolutionary purpose of my being here, expressed as me right at this moment in time. And what came rushing back to me was I've always had this extreme frustration with the insistence of an entire generation of parents to funnel their children into a path of purported security, and it defined very narrowly as the medical profession. I just was always really perplexed and annoyed by it because I was under that same unspoken and unmistakable pressure to meet that standard. And I was in a position to do it, whereas so many of the friends that I saw growing up just were not in a position to do it, and had to endure the disappointment and humiliation of being compared to other kids like me who could do it. And I never understood it. It just made no sense to me that, somehow I was an example because I could just be more complicit in this ridiculous idea that there's some kind of promised land at the end of this rainbow called medicine. So my perception of that whole field was very blurred from the beginning. It was never something I could ever approach with any kind of neutrality. It always had a very big charge. And then I should say that my perception was skewed because all of the Chinese American people I knew growing up, which were very few, were the sons and daughters of either PhDs or MDs. So their parents had come to this country to go to graduate school in science. So what was that all about? And especially, I would ask my parents all the time how they ended up doing what they're doing and interested in what they're interested in. And it was a completely different path because they never chose what to be interested in. They just tried to get the highest score possible, which was the ticket to having as much choice as possible. But then the prize for getting the highest score possible was to get dropped into these tracks. Your profession is chosen for you based on your test score. So it really was a foreign concept to talk about taking interest in something and actually pursuing it. It was more about achieving and being allowed to study something based on your merit. So they were never very helpful in sorting out, interests and passions. But why was it science? Especially, my mom, who was always very good at foreign languages and whose parents, neither of whom were scientists. And she and her sister both became PhDs in science-related fields. And they both have dreams that were suppressed to different degrees. My mom completely, to the point where she can't even name a real dream, and my aunt to a lesser degree where she could name it but never got to pursue it in her working lifetime. So as I was reflecting, just now trying to fall asleep, about my grandfather's story and all of the, just kind of taking in the magnitude of it and how it was so minimized when we were kids. Like, it was just like, yep, and then that happened, and then that happened, and then now you're here in Libertyville. You're an American now, okay? You're just like everybody else. Just go be just like all the other kids. Except be the best. So what was the science thing about? And what was the whole security thing about? And now that I see how much of entire generations were rooted very firmly in survival, that science provided this promise of certainty and predictability and measurability. And in a way, the experience that my grandfather went through with what he saw happen to the Chinese government in his lifetime, I'm sure, planted a seed of distrust in humanity for him. That I'm sure it was gravely disappointing for him to see a communist government come into power and stay in power for half of his lifetime and more. And just to imagine him witnessing that and then trying to provide guidance to his children, both of whom, by the way, my aunt and my mom, both were valedictorians of their high school in Taiwan, the top girls' high school in Taiwan, and so they didn't have to take the entrance exam. This is like what I only learned recently also about my aunt. I knew this about my mom, but not that my aunt also. They didn't have to take the entrance exam. So they literally had any choice available to them. They could have chosen any field at any university. They could have studied anything. They could have become whatever they wanted. And that's a luxury given to only that one person in that high school, in that country. And they chose science. My aunt wanted to be an architect. She always loved design. And my mom was always good at foreign languages but can't name anything that she really loved because it's so suppressed. And so my aunt ended up getting a PhD in organic chemistry or toxicology or something. I think toxicology. And then my mom got a PhD in pharmacognosy, which is this very obscure, at that time it was very obscure. It was medicinal botany. And nobody cared about that in the 1960s. Kind of came back recently as cool, herbal medicines. But it was like, when I asked her about that story, it was like, it was her parents' best guess at what might be useful in the future as they saw the world unfolding. But, I mean, with that tumultuous experience, how could you give anyone advice about how the world was going to unfold at that point and what was going to be a stable, useful, respectable profession in a foreign country that they'd never been to and only watched movies about? So it's quite interesting the level of parental respect and deference that has been shown over those generations, including myself. I mean, I'm somebody who graduated from medical school in order to earn the minimum standard for the right to live my own life. That was like what I thought I had to do to get my parents to not have anything to say to me anymore about what they expected. So that's the level of suppression that I had, and that I'm overcoming slowly. But why the sciences and why is this unique voice concept so important for the the next evolutionary imperative for my generation, for those of us who are healing from these historical periods of silencing, historical periods of loss of faith in humanity, loss of the freedom to express and be our joy and our love beyond survival. So this is about moving beyond survival into what is that? It's literally been generations since anyone has tasted anything beyond survival. Even though, if I were to look at my parents' life in this country, they did well. They had a house in the suburbs, they had corporate jobs that gave them nice retirement prospects, and they rode that wave, and that's so much better than so many of us are really trying to aspire to at this point. But they were always in survival mode, never really got beyond it mentally. And I know that it's something I am in the process of breaking through in my own way into, what is this zone of thriving? What does it mean, and what does it look like to have faith in the unfolding of a life beyond survival? Can we even imagine it after 2 whole generations have had to live with a suppressed version of their wildest imagination, of their fullest expression? And, I just think of, again, I return to the image of so many in my generation who are hiding behind the illusion of science, the illusion of security, and the illusion of suppression as good enough, that are not awake to their opportunity to claim their greatest joy, their most expansive imaginations, and their biggest potential for realizing what's fully human and beautiful about them. That it's like, no, I'll just take this small version over here that seems good enough and practical and doable, and I'll just do it for my kids. Which is another inherited pattern of deferral to the next generation. Except the original pattern was set under circumstances of duress, where survival seemed to be at stake, and so a radical choice in the name of outrageous love was made. In the face of outrageous pain, their response was outrageous love, and that was the action that was taken. But now, if you come to the present moment, living in the United States as a professional in whatever field, and with these top dollar educations and all the pedigrees that are adorning us, and we're just going to sit back and kind of just follow that same pattern of holding down the suburban lifestyle and giving it all to our kids while remaining underexpressed and suppressed in our uniqueness and our voice. It's not okay, because what are those children experiencing from their parents? My generation. So what are my generation's children going to experience from their children? Are they seeing the actions of outrageous love, or are they seeing just merely doing what's been done before? and what's been what's safe and what's been proven. And if not now, when? When will it be time to wake up? That's an individual question for each person to discover the answer to. But someone needs to ask the question in a way that's relatable. Someone needs to tell a story of awakening, of what's on the other side of this beautiful, expansive imagination, joy, freedom, and love. Someone needs to speak of this, to even issue the invitation. And I know that happened for me at a time in my life when I was open to receiving a new story and a new message. And I took it from whoever showed up and embodied the presence that seemed to speak to me at that moment. So I'm sort of feeling that, the urgency of being the voice, my voice, and being a potential channel for many different people to wake up. We need you, every one of you, to wake up to the beauty, the gorgeousness of your uniqueness. We need you to add your unique voice to the symphony of life. We need everyone. Not everyone in the sense of conformity or acquiescence, but we need the every richness of every single one in its beauty and uniqueness to step up and vibrate. In this beautiful co-creation, collaboration, improvisation, unfolding. There's too many muffled voices and suppressed sounds. It's been suppressed for too long, and now is the time. We're here right now in this country at this moment in time with all of the technologies that are available to us and all of the challenges. This is the time now to restore faith in the diversity of the human tapestry and the beauty when everyone is given the freedom or claims the freedom to stand in the uniqueness of their voice.